Welcome back to the first Why Blank Lost of Survivor 45. I'm David Bloomberg, and I'm very happy to be joined once again by my Survivor co-host, Jessica Lewis.
Welcome back, and here we are to start discussions on another very interesting season thus far.
Yes.
And we're not alone either,
That's
David,
right.
are we? This is
That's
so
right.
exciting.
As video viewers can already see, we are thrilled to have a special guest, my fellow engineering manager, Heidi Lagares-Greenblatt, the runner-up of Survivor 44.
Woo! Yay! Thank you for having me. Oh, I'm so excited to be here, and let's just have fun.
All right.
Yeah, this is going to be a great time. I'm very excited.
Yes. Now, Heidi, we have two engineers here against one lawyer, and everyone knows you should vote out the lawyer first.
I knew this was going to be a topic of discussion. And again, this is why when you go on that show, you don't tell people you're a lawyer, because there's such, aggression and desire to not let lawyers stay in these games. I'm very nervous for Jake. He's my winner pick.
I know. It's because there's this impression that lawyers are smarter, but Heidi, we know engineers
are smarter.
Yeah.
I'm going to start that rumor that engineers need to be voted off from Survivor, not the lawyers. Okay, let's do that instead. Gosh, amazing.
I feel like engineers, some of them may have not said all the way what they do. For the most part, I feel like I said it. I said, okay, I'm an engineer, and other people said, I'm an engineer too, right? So I feel like we didn't cover that part that much. Although Carson is kind of in our line, right? He was completely saying something different. But anyway.
Well, you know what I think is interesting, though, is that when you say engineer, I feel like some people are just like, what does that actually mean?
Yes.
Just because there's such a wide range of what it could include. Whereas if you say lawyer, people just automatically assume like, oh, well, you're just in a courtroom and you're just, it's such an, even though there are so many avenues and different types of lawyers and things that you are doing as a lawyer, but it seems to be just kind of centralized, as opposed to engineers are a little more questions like, what does that include? What does that mean? And so
more mysterious.
You're elusive. Yes, you're very mysterious. And so you can get away with being super smart and playing Survivor and people not targeting you because of it. So,
but I think engineers, when you think of engineers, you think of smart, but you don't think of people that can speak, right? That could, be eloquent behind their thoughts. Versus lawyers, you immediately think they can have an argument and they're going to win. So I think there's something behind that within the Survivor game that speaks loud about that, because lawyers can speak very well. Yeah,
that is very fair.
Yeah, some lawyer, and see, this is something I've said, and I heard someone else say it on an RHAP patron show, but I've been saying it for a while because we keep hearing this: lawyers are smart, and some lawyers are smart, but by virtue of being a lawyer, I worked with lawyers for 30 years, very closely. They're not all smart. Trust me. Okay. Some of the dumbest people that I worked with were lawyers. And so, and
they're not listening. They're not listening.
No, they're not listening because I don't think they know how to open a podcast app. So, I mean, there was, some of the stories I could tell. We don't have time, but even like one of the lawyers I worked closely with, I mentioned this to her and she was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely true. Now, engineers, they're not all smart either,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think that there is definitely more of a reputation, because there was even where I worked. And I worked with a lot of lawyers, but I managed a lot of engineers. And there's a reputation, especially of male engineers, that it's like, a woman, and so, and again, that is a cliche more than anything, but also some of them, it's true. And so I think that kind of, like you said, Heidi, that, the speaking part of it. Now, for my job, not to go too far on a tangent, for my job, our engineers had to be able to write and speak also. And so I would give a written part of an interview when I did it. And the engineers that were, interviewing for the positions were like, what is this? I have to be able to write? We're not supposed to do that. Back when I was a teaching assistant, I actually graded lab reports and I included 5 points for grammar.
Absolutely.
Gosh, they were so mad at me. I mean, the students, they were like, we're engineers. We shouldn't need to know proper grammar. But yeah, so anyway, that was a much longer tangent than I expected, and I blame myself for it. So, because what I wanted to do was address something upfront about this podcast before we talk to you some more, Heidi, because some people may be wondering, why are you even doing a podcast? Hannah quit. But even when someone isn't voted out, which technically she was, we still examine their game to that point. I mean, we even did that with Bruce last season, although it was combined with another one.
Right.
Plus, just as some players do things wrong that result in them getting voted out, we'll discuss the things Hannah did wrong that resulted in her voting herself out. Because as we'll see, her actual quit was the last step in an ongoing process that started before the game even began.
Tell me something. Did she make history in the new era? Is she the first one to quit in the new era? I believe that's true.
She made it not just history in the new era. So she is the first one to quit in the new era and the earliest quit ever.
Oh my God. Okay.
So
incredible.
Yeah. Now, for anyone who may be new to the podcast, we don't just discuss engineers and lawyers and quitters.
And quitters.
Yeah. Each week we compare the game of the person voted out or who left for whatever reason to my rules for winning that I originally wrote way back after season 1 and have been updating ever since using all the non-spoiler information available to us from what we saw on TV, interviews, social media, secret scenes, if there were any. There were some secret scenes this time. They didn't really play into anything. The newest version of the rules can be found on our website by going to the dedicated page at robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed. Normally we have a little bar, but the bar doesn't work with 3 people. It covers one of us up, so we don't want that.
Can I say something? So I will tell you, if there's someone listening out there who wants to be in the game, these are the kind of things we read and research and study ahead of the game. And I'm sure we're going to get into that, right? But you do want to prepare, and it doesn't mean you're going to follow them to the T, right? Because
but you better. Yeah.
But no, for real. Like, I think a lot of this game, Survivor, is a lot about adapting to the situation, right?
Yes,
so you never
100%.
know. But I think it's good to have a baseline that you want to follow, and then you adapt accordingly. But just remember, there's a reason why you wrote it, and it's sticking around, right? Because I do think there's a lot of truth behind every single one of them, and we'll talk about that. But if you want to be in Survivor or you get casted in the future, read them. Do they make sense? What does that mean for you and your strategy, right? So I will tell you. In 44, I was in season 44. In 44, I know for a fact a lot of us had it printed, had it in our books beforehand. So we actually read them and we listened, right? So do we follow them? That's a whole different discussion, but they do make sense. So at least
look at that.
Yeah, I mean, 3 out of the final 4. Not Jam as it happened, but 3 out of the final 4 all had studied the rules, printed the rules, some snuck in the rules, So that was a
it's
nice
a good pat on your back,
yes,
Bloomberg.
Yes.
Yeah. What a treat.
Yes. And like you said, there's a reason it stuck around. And the thing is, Jeff even opened the season by saying at its core, Survivor is essentially the same game it was in season 1. And that's the reason. Yes, mostly. He did say other than some twists and advantages. But, that's why my rules have stayed essentially the same at their core. I've moved rules around. I've, had to add the one for advantages. But, yeah, I mean, these are, if someone wants to, go back in time and look at the post-season 1 rules, you will find a lot of similarities there.
Yeah. And there is a lot to be said about the fact that the rules that you've created have been based upon actual gameplay that has existed since the beginning. And people who are interested in being on this show should probably be a little more familiar with that backstory when they are
Mhm.
going on the show, because that's where this is all built upon. And if you don't understand the game at its true core, then you're going to have a very, very difficult time being out there.
Absolutely. And just know what they mean, right? What do they mean to you? Because every single one of them they have a lot of meanings and stories behind it. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. And so, we were, obviously, as we mentioned, Heidi, we are thrilled to have you on here, and we were excited to find out you were a listener, you studied the rules and everything else, like you said, before your own Survivor journey.
Yes,
let's
talk about it. Oh, I would say, and I'm sounding like I'm just selling your podcast here, but maybe I am.
We love that. That's okay.
The reason I really like the two of you, I think maybe there is an aspect of how the two of you are so different, right? A player, not player, a female or male. All of that it almost reduces a
lawyer,
lot of
the
bias. Yes. But it reduces a lot of the biases, right? I mean, we all have biases, let's be honest, right? However, I love when there's like just a male perspective, and Jessica will be like, no, hold on, wait a minute. So I do love that. There's something so beautiful about that. So that's why
thank you.
I love it so much. So thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. Well, we always love finding out that players are listeners, and sometimes they secretly let us know that that's happened. So that is definitely a good time when we have that moment. So we appreciate the support.
Sometimes they're like Voce, and they go into the pre-show interviews and go, I'm going to follow David Bloomberg's rules.
Yes.
And I'm just sitting there listening along and go, wait, what?
That's awesome.
It is very, very nice. So thank you, Heidi. We love the plug. This is great.
On the challenge this past week, we had the first time two people who came into the game following my rules ever oil wrestled. When Desi and Cassidy oil wrestled each other. And Desi was one of the first people to come in and say, I studied David Bloomberg's rules, And of course, we know about Cassidy's. So, it was, I didn't expect. So Heidi, you're going to have to pick someone, maybe, to wrestle,
This is going in a very different direction, Bloomberg.
Yeah.
I think maybe we need to get back on track with what we were going to talk about instead of oil wrestling at this point.
I left out the oil. Regular wrestling is fine.
No, you said oil wrestling.
No, when I said Heidi has to. When I said Heidi.
Okay, so we're just supposed to skip over the fact that you had already mentioned the oil wrestling.
I didn't create the challenge. Okay.
All right. Maybe Heidi wants to do mud wrestling. I don't know. Let's see what Heidi wants to do.
Yeah.
I was just with Cassidy on Wednesday. We watched the premiere together. So shout out to
that's
Cassidy.
So great.
And I listened to the podcast last year with her. So shout out to her.
I love that. Well, that's excellent.
Yes.
Cassidy's great.
Yes. So before we move any further, I know we already kind of started talking about a lot of things. Heidi, is there anything else you want to talk about from your own, Survivor journey or anything like that before we go further?
You got to be careful with that question, because we could be here 3 hours just talking about my season of myself. And I try not to do that, but I'm sure throughout our conversation is going to come, because it's so hard not to say, well, in my season or me or whatever. So it's going to come organically. But no, what I would just say about season 44 is I'm super proud that I was casted on 44, because our cast was amazing, right? Every single one of us, all 18 of us, I think they did a fantastic job. And I think the edits share a lot, even though it was only 60 minutes, right? Not 90. I do think that we connected a lot with the audience, and that was pretty epic. It was great season, and I cannot wait to see 45 and see what happens.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think this episode, started out really well. I know some people will disagree, with how it started, like, he already had, Brandon already had problems at the beginning. But I think, that's going to happen. And I think it started really well, and then it kind of ended. I mean, there's nothing production could have done with it, but it kind of ended in a fizzle. And so, because of the controversial way Hannah went out, I think it would be good for us to give our thoughts on her quit our own personal thoughts before we get to analyzing what happened. Because anyone who has been on social media at all knows there are a wide variety of takes on it, ranging from utter rage to the feeling that it was her game and completely up to her. And, I have suspicions on where you two might lie, but we haven't discussed it ahead of time, so it'll be a surprise to all of us. Now, one thing before going into that, I want to say one thing that should be obvious, and I think it's obvious to all of our regular listeners, but I'm going to say it anyway because, who knows? Maybe someone is just happening on this podcast for the first time. Whatever else we may say, Survivor is a game and a TV show, and the fact that some people have taken it so far as to leave nasty reviews for Hannah's business it's disgusting. And it's unfortunately not the first time that's happened to a reality TV contestant. It's not even the first time in the past month that it's happened, because Heisem from Big Brother, same thing happened to him. People went on to Google and Yelp and left bad reviews because they didn't like the way he was acting on Big Brother. And so anyone who is considering doing that, you need to take a breath and seriously consider your priorities in life.
Yeah, we're humans. Sure. They are humans, right? Yeah. So, yes. I mean, we try to avoid all the negativity, but in her case, there was a lot out there. Yes. And I know she said she didn't have social media and all that, but it's kind of hard to avoid it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, she said they still found her,
Yeah, so there is a human being out there, so just remember that. I mean, for the old players, right? The ex-players that we played before, we do know. I mean, be smart. If you're a player, don't make those comments. What if you got those comments back in the day, right? Yeah. So just be aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that said, I'll go first as the non-player here. I have been covering Survivor since the very beginning. I remember Austin's quit and how upset everyone was. I mean, that was the very first one. I remember the quits of Purple Kelly, Nyanka, Johnny Fairplay, everybody else. And when I was still running my websites, one of them was the Reality TV Hall of Shame. And quitters got inducted, not just for Survivor, but people who quit on The Apprentice, The Celebrity Apprentice. Not the most shameful thing about those shows. America's Next Top Model, etc. Because I went back, I looked at it, I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even remember that, because some of them I didn't write. Other writers put them together. Some people got double inducted because they were jerks in their exit interviews or other future behavior. If I were still running that website right now, Hannah would probably be inducted for quitting just for consistency's sake. We always took a vote among the contributors, so it wasn't like it was just my decision, so I can't say for certain, but I think probably we would have. Especially since, like we were just saying, she was the earliest quit ever and the first in 8 seasons. So what would I have said about her then? Now, on the one hand, I want to be understanding that this was not what she thought it was, and it was much harder in real life than on TV. On the other hand, this is Survivor 45. There really isn't an excuse to not understand how hard it is in terms of not having food, difficulty sleeping, the weather, etc. Nor is there an excuse to take away someone else's dream of being on the show. Yes, I know she said in her interviews that one reason she quit was so she would allow Emily or Brandon to continue with their dreams to play. And that's good. I'm glad she thought of that. But her logic falls apart a bit, because just by being there, she already took away someone else's chance. Yep. Specifically in this case, the poor alternate who was sent home from Fiji like a few days earlier and then had to sit and watch this. Now, usually the alternates end up getting cast on a future season. And so I hope that her alternate was, is going to be on 46 or is in this next round. But through the domino effect, someone is still missing out. There isn't an infinite amount here.
Right.
Now, even with all that in mind, I'm not as worked up about it as I probably would have been in the past. Maybe I've mellowed with age. Some people would look at me and say, this is you mellow, David. But maybe it's because she didn't come out and make things worse by being a defiant jerk in interviews, like some of the people I mentioned earlier. Like I have done some interviews with people who quit and they came out and they were like, ah, ah, ah. She obviously was not like that. I'm definitely upset that she quit. I'm just not like raging mad like I would be if Jeff announced like that Edge of Extinction was back or something like that.
Yeah.
I agree. I feel like I am close to your opinion, right? And I do think, but Heidi pre-Survivor player Heidi, before I played the game, I think I would have been mad. Same thing. Like, oh my gosh, she took a spot. How dare you, kind of thing. But I do think now that I went through the experience, right? I do think there's a little bit of me understanding this is a really hard game. And not only that, it's psychologically affects you, right? So, and I think she has a background in that. So if she's probably saw, oh my God, this is going to start affecting my life, and she stepped out because of that, maybe I'm speculating, right? Maybe she made the right decision for herself, but that doesn't mean I agree with it. Okay. That doesn't mean I liked it. But I do think, she, at the time, I would agree, if she was gonna quit in the tribal council and don't let other people leave because they got voted out. So at least you took that spot. Don't quit halfway through the day. That would have been awful, right? Oh my God! But I have so much to say because. And Jessica, we can get into this because I always talk about the new era. We don't get anything, right? We don't get the rice that the pre-new era, the people that got rice or beans back in the day or whatever. There is a difference having the rice, and we got them halfway through our season. So I do know not having anything sucks. Okay. And I was in Soka, and in Soka we lost the machete on the first day for a few hours. And when we didn't have the machete, we're like, now what, right? You cannot cut palm fronds, or you cannot cut the coconuts. So I think it does make a difference to not have anything, or having that flint, having that machete, and having the pot, right? I do think there's a difference between having those three things versus not having it. And I cannot even imagine like opening a coconut without a machete. It's even like probably three times harder. So the amount of energy they have to spend without anything is probably a lot more than we did with the three things that we had, right?
Sure.
Now, that's not an excuse, but I could see how not having those three things takes it to the even next level, right? But to your point, this is Survivor. I mean, we don't get food. We should know that. You don't get toilet paper. You don't get a pillow and a blanket. I mean, for the people who are people still ask me, is it truly real? You don't get those things? Yes, it is real. And you can see it in Hannah, right? She actually couldn't really stand it, and then she had to do that. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I'm just telling you, I truly think not having those little things probably impacted her to the level that she was not expecting. Clearly, that's why she quit.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I really look at it too, and I understand entirely the difference of my season versus your season, Heidi, where we were provided things at the beginning. But I still feel like this is it's very disappointing, and it's very sad for anyone who is desirous of going on to this show. Every season has shifted and changed a little bit. And one of the things that Jeff has talked about in this new era is the lack of things that you will be provided. And that is something that you have to prepare yourself for. And before I went out to Survivor, I drank 4 cups of coffee a day. And I stopped myself probably 2 weeks. I weaned myself off. I'm like, I'm just going to stop drinking coffee because I don't want that to end up affecting me when I'm in the game. And I started becoming mindful of the things I wasn't going to have while I was in the game. This is a mental game as well. And she is a therapist. And you mentioned that, Heidi, that she probably tried to prepare herself. And I know she said she read some books about being mentally strong and things of that nature. But there are so many things that you just have to start realizing about yourself before you walk out there.
I agree.
And what your limitations will be and what your strengths will be. And one thing that I can say is you don't know how your body is going to react. You don't know how you're going to acclimate. Some people acclimate better than others. I was, I think, one of the more lucky people on my tribe where I acclimated very well. Other people on my tribe didn't acclimate so well. But I also ended up with that eye infection and almost got medevaced within the first 3 days of the game. And I was beside myself that there was a chance I was going to be removed from that game. And I was angry and was willing to go blind just to stay in that game. I'm like, I don't care. You're not kicking me out. I am staying here because this is a dream. This is incredible. This is an opportunity of a lifetime. You are not removing me from this game. And so you have to be so strong internally to adjust and respond to what you are being given. And I do think that even with the new season, you're not getting food, you're not getting a bed and a pillow and all of these things that you mentioned, Heidi. You have to be mindful of that. And if you don't think that you can handle it, and if you don't take steps to prepare yourself for that, then you are on the wrong boat. You're on the wrong show. You should have never decided this is what I want to do. This is why you have to have all of that energy put into the game before you even walk out there. Because if you
100.
don't, you're going to be doing exactly what Hannah did and realizing, wait a second, this is hard. This is hard.
Yeah.
It's not, this is not summer camp. It's Survivor.
Yes.
Yeah. And some of that we'll actually get to in the rules because, that's where some of this fits.
One thing that Jessica said that I agree 100%, the coffee, right? And I was in the similar situation. I love my coffee. I've been drinking coffee since I was a kid because it's part of our culture and I just love it.
Sure.
I stopped my coffee 2 months. I started prepping 2 months. As soon as I heard I was in the show, I started prepping because I drink a lot of coffee. So I was like, okay, I'm going from multiple cups to just 1 cup in the morning. And then after 1 cup, I switched to decaf. And then from decaf, I was like, mushroom coffee, which by the way, it was awful. If you've ever had mushroom coffee, it's horrible.
I've seen it advertised.
I was like, because people said, oh, you should have mushroom coffee. I'm like, okay, I'm going to switch it because apparently it doesn't have caffeine, or at least the one I had. It was absolutely horrible. I was like, no, that made it easier for me to completely stop after that. But it was a process. It was a long process for me. And to your point, I do think if you know you're going to go into this game, at least prep to the best of your ability. Yes. I think there's no real way to prep for no food, right? Because whether you
I'm gonna
let's talk about that. Oh my God, because
you can fast. You can certainly practice fasting.
Yes. And again, if we can wait till Rule 7, I have thoughts about that particular thing. Because she even said some stuff in her interviews that relate to that, and it's like, and that's obviously for people who, like I said, maybe new to this podcast, that's one thing we do is we take the notes and the interviews and connect the threads here, and so I think we're gonna see that maybe she should have known this. As for me, this is not coffee. This is brewed chocolate. So
this is coffee, people.
I'm sticking with water right now.
No mushrooms for any of us here.
No, no mushroom coffee. No.
Now, as I had mentioned earlier, in a few minutes, we'll discuss more of how she played and what led to this outcome. But before we get to the rules, yes, I know we're almost a half hour in, but when you turn down this podcast, you had to know there was going to be a lot more than just the rules here. So we have some other things that we want to discuss from this week's episode. Someone else, Hannah obviously, came in unprepared. We talked a little bit about that. We'll talk about that more. Someone else on her tribe came in unprepared in a different way in terms of dealing with people, because we have to talk about Emily, even though I have a feeling we'll soon be dedicating a whole podcast to her. So I don't want to do a deep dive into everything that she's already done wrong, which probably takes up a page of notes right there. But she's done everything possible to get herself voted out first, and probably only has Hannah to thank for that not happening. though, of course, with that whole visiting tribe member twist that we'll talk about, it's possible Brandon might have gone. But from the moment Emily started taking shots at Bruce on the barge for no reason,
Yes.
I don't understand what she was doing out there. I watched that clip multiple times. It'll probably be out on TikTok before this podcast even gets posted. But what are you doing? The poor
I
guy
agree.
just returns and says, "Hi, I'm here. Don't worry, I'm nothing special." And you're like, "Oh yeah, yes you are. Don't you deny it? I'm gonna come right at you." It's like, whoa.
And I don't think, you know how Jeff asked, like, what's your name? The guy in the back with whatever, right? I don't even think Jeff did that to her, right? She just went like, "Excuse me." I don't know exactly what the first word was, but it was just like she wanted to get it out. And she talks a lot. She did it in the first episode, and she did it in some of her interviews pregame, right? That she cannot lie, and she wants, you know, everything comes out or whatever. However, maybe comparing it with Hannah, how Hannah had to prepare with the non-eating nicotine and all of that. I do think Emily should have prepared that. Okay, what is going to be my strategy? If I am speaking everything, my strategy needs to be to tone it down. And I am with you, David. Like, what was she thinking? Like, what went through her head to think this was good for her game, right? It just doesn't make sense. Now, I was trying to sit back and not get so emotional about the situation there. And I was thinking, okay, she's trying to put a target on Bruce, right? So maybe there's a little bit of strategy. But if you do that, don't do it in front of everyone, including the Blue Tribe, right? Like just didn't, it's like putting a target on herself rather than Bruce. I do not understand that whatsoever for her game.
Yeah, you really need to know how to read the room when you're in a situation like that.
Or the barge.
Or the barge. And there is one thing about when Jeff's questions are being posed, there is this sensation, not from everyone, but I saw it, I witnessed it, I was yelled at by production for not buying into it. When he speaks, he wants the goods, you know, he wants you to like be completely honest and say these things. And I'm like, but everyone else is listening. So how is that beneficial to me if I all of a sudden start spewing all the goods and saying, well, this is how I actually feel? No, that's not going to benefit your game. It'll get you 5 more minutes on TV, but it's going to get you that much less time in the game. So it's one of those situations where just because Jeff Probst is speaking doesn't mean you need to air everyone's dirty laundry right away. You do what Heidi said. You take that back to your camp and you say, you know, it's kind of funny that he's here. And isn't that interesting? And you start planting that seed and talking to people about it, as opposed to putting it on a poster board and announcing it 5 minutes into the actual moment that you're meeting Jeff. Because I think even Jeff was like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah, he was like, okay, then, great way to start off for me.
Awesome.
Not for you, but
sorry, Bruce, but
One thing that we often talk about in the pregame mostly is when the really big super fans get out there and they have to be silent for a week in Ponderosa. And we worry that as soon as they get out there, everything's going to come out. And it's going to make them look bad. I wonder if in Emily's mind, she saw him and has seen him there for a week, and it has just been building and building. Like, it's not fair. He has this advantage and da-da-da. And so the minute she could talk, whoop, it all came out without thinking that, hey, maybe I shouldn't.
You know what?
She's a super fan, though. She's someone who was she just started watching, right? Because she was the one that was like watched it like for an entire evening, or like I don't know, 8 hours straight or something. Isn't she the one? And then
she was the one who, and this I can definitely appreciate. She watched Gabler win and got so mad that she applied.
Okay, so she was more. So again, this is one of those like haven't been watching all along.
Yeah,
and
she watched.
Isn't
she's
as
one
familiar
of the
with the
fell into the pandemic watching.
Yes, the pandemic watchers. Yeah,
that doesn't give an excuse though.
No, I'm not saying it's an excuse. I'm saying like there's this unfamiliarity with those moments and how to interact with your new tribe. Like when you're just meeting people, you don't want to be like, hey everyone, I'm really loud and I'm going to share everything that's going through my brain right now. And I want you all to know that. Like maybe not do that. Maybe just say, hi, my name is Emily.
Yeah.
Great to
And
meet
now,
you.
now a lot of my friends are like, she just wants to be that villain and get the camera and all of that, right? So then it just puts a perception out there that may not be true. Maybe it is true. I don't know. But it's just like, this is killing your game. But to your point of not talking the week before, I actually agree that it is hard to not talk for a full week. You see them, okay? When you're in the pregame, you see them, but you cannot talk to them. In my case, and I don't know, in 45, we were wearing masks, so you can only see the contestants like up here.
Really?
So you
that's
couldn't,
even worse.
see. I mean, you can kind of tell when people are smiling, right? Because you kind of see their eyes like smiling too and things like that. But it brings it to a whole new level where it's like, I can not only talk, I don't see their faces and their smiles. So it's a little strange. Anyway, but I could agree that, oh my God, if I don't talk for a whole week, after that, you're like, you want to talk all the time. So yeah, maybe there's a little truth behind that, but she was definitely killing her game right off the bat. And it just, I cannot find in my head a good strategy where that is good for her game.
Yeah. Now, continuing with the target of her verbal attack, Bruce, I was happy, one, to see him back, but two, to see him tell his tribe mates that weaving palm fronds is a waste of time. Now,
I agree with that, though.
Yeah, I know this got lumped in with some of the other things he said that annoyed some people, but the thing is, he didn't need to have been on the show to know that fact. Lots of previous contestants have said it publicly, including on this very podcast.
Yeah. It's a waste of time. Don't do it.
Yeah. So, Bruce didn't need to be a 12-hour returnee. Yeah.
It takes forever. It's not worth it. People out there, don't do it. It's a waste of time. Just put them just like that. Clean them because there's mosquitoes and bugs, but don't do it. It's a waste of time.
There you go. So anyone who goes out there in the future, you don't have to say, I was here for 12 hours and I know this. You just say, I heard Jessica and Heidi tell me.
Right. Exactly.
I let's talk about Bruce for a second there because I have to get it out ahead of talking about Bruce. I am biased with Bruce. I am all about Team Bruce because he's a good friend of mine. I love him. He was in 44 and I am cheering for him in 45. So I'm gonna try to keep my biases to the side. But it's so interesting how that he's like, oh, I'm Uncle Bruce. I'm not Dad. I'm Uncle Bruce. And then they're clearly putting all of these things together. Do this, do that. Don't do this. Oh, I know, the fire, a little fire, the wet wood is going to get the bugs out, whatever. So I can see that being his thing this season, right? They're probably going to put it all together. It's going to look like, Bruce, what are you doing? But anyway, so best of luck, Bruce. I'm cheering for you.
Yeah, I was just sad they didn't show him jumping off the boat. That was in all the promos. Him jumping off the boat.
Oh, it was.
It's on his t-shirts. So the only thing I can think of is hopefully that's at least in the intros that we get that we're actually going to get starting in episode 2. We're actually going to get the
has
song
to be in the intro. Because that is just such a great image. Yeah.
Did he jump with shoes too? And let's talk about the shoes. I know other podcasts talked about the shoes, but when I was watching it, I was like, why are they swimming with their shoes? Did you all notice that? Maybe because I'm a player, I noticed those little things make a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, when you're on the barge, I don't think you have much of a choice.
But the Yellow Tribe, the girls took their shoes off. Was it Yellow Tribe? Maybe not. I can't remember. But the girls that jumped.
This is when he just jumped. This is after because he didn't participate in that part of the challenge.
Oh, you're right.
You take your shoes off if you're going to be doing that part of the challenge. And can we just say, just real quick, that whole idea of when to wear your shoes versus when not to wear your shoes and trying to keep your shoes dry and trying to keep your feet dry is very frustrating when you're out there because you're like, what is this challenge going to be? Do I need to have my sneakers on? Are they going to get wet? Is that going to affect them? Are they going to be slippery? I mean, it's all of these things that you have to think about. So be very mindful of your foot attire when you were going out to Survivor. Another thing to prepare for.
Yeah, yes. I think that whoever didn't take their shoes just wasn't thinking about it. But if they saw other people do it, because a couple people did, like you said. But another thing that someone wasn't thinking about was, there was another issue on the Lulu tribe, because in the opening challenge, we saw Brandon having trouble on the rope ladder. Okay. But what got me was he was having trouble and he told Sean, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sean literally goes up and leaves him hanging.
Yeah.
Literally leaving him hanging. He just goes up and stands by the rest of his tribe.
He came back. He came back.
He came back because I think it was Sabaya was like, go help him.
Yeah. I mean, poor Brandon. Like, we can talk about him all day also, because I mean, how not to love him, right? Yeah. When he stepped on the mat, it wasn't really a mat, but when he started the game, you can see his emotions, right? Even before he has said anything. And I understand it, right? If you're a true fan, and it sounds like he was for many, many years, I would agree that first moment when you step there and you see all the cameras, because there's a lot of cameras that first day, at least in my experience, you don't know.
God,
it's like a blur. You don't know what's happening, and it happens so quickly, and they're like, go. And then you're like, wait, what? So I do think that first moment there is super, super fun. Yet I don't remember every single thing, because it's just like, it's just overload, right?
It is definitely overload. Yeah. When we pulled up, because we were all in the boat, so when all of a sudden we made this bend and we pull up, and you're just like, there's like 150 cameras up there.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it is like a just literal wall of cameras, and you're just like, okay, this is happening.
Yes.
and then you have to respond and react and do everything. So yeah, but he was certainly very emotional, and I feel for him quite a bit. I loved him in all of his pregame press. He is truly a huge fan, but I am very, very worried that part of his issue is going to be that emotion that he's just he's like living his dream, and he can't manage. Right. It's like, he's like, I've never had this feeling in my chest before. And unfortunately, he's experiencing his dream in an incredibly difficult environment that we've already talked about, and having to put all of these things together and then perform physically. And I'm very concerned for him that it's just going to be too much. It's going to be too overwhelming.
Yeah. But on the other hand, even with everything that happened to him, he still had his sense of humor on the barge. You know, he's sitting there exhausted, and based on what Hannah said in interviews, it was even worse than we saw. And then Jeff is like, okay, you each need to pick 2 people to do sweat versus Savage. He's like, yeah, I'm going to,
I volunteer. To sit out or something.
Yeah, I'm going to sit out of sweat, you know, which got a laugh out of everybody. So humor is a very good way to deflect that sort of situation. Even when he got to their island, he was like, hello, I'm here, I'm not dead, you know.
I think it's but as a viewer and as a fan, love him, right? Like, how not to love Brandon, because it's so hard not to like, you know, to dislike him, because everything he's bringing is emotion for us. Now, as a player, I'm 100% with Jessica. You gotta learn to control it, because that's everything in this game. That emotion and controlling it takes everything for you to control your emotions and really make it all the way to the end.
Yeah. Now, speaking of that sweat versus savvy that he was not doing, they obviously changed it to be head to head. You know, it's clear they wanted to ensure that at least one tribe didn't get their equipment, and as it turned out, it was both.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I suppose it's good to have some change, but quite frankly, I could still do without the whole concept. And it all links back to Jeff's "you have to earn it" thing. And I'm sorry, I just don't care. Let everybody have a machete, a pot, and a flint. It's not much, like you said, Heidi. It's not much at all. Let them have it. Don't make them kill themselves. I mean,
I agree.
Yeah.
I liked it. I like the challenge. I mean, it's a little bit of a I feel like now we're expecting the sweat versus savvy, right? I think we're expecting it. I personally liked it. I cannot wait to look at the puzzle and just pause it so I can recreate it, because the little thing, the flint, I think you have to like get it out or whatever, right? I was trying to look to see how it works. It didn't come across on TV like it's something I can tell exactly what it is.
I'm sure Carson's already 3D printed it.
Yeah.
Yes, but it excited me, and here's the thing, and maybe a question for the two of you. Do you think, if you know you're running out of time or you think it's too hard, would you go hard at it, or be like, you know what, nobody's making it, I'm just going to stop and take my energy? I mean, what do you do in that instance?
I'm breaking that thing. That's what I'm going to try to do.
I mean, yeah, for that part, I would go hard at it. If it was the logs second, let's say it was the puzzle first and the logs second, then I might have a different opinion. If I look at this and I have a few minutes left and I have 20 logs, it's like,
you're like, screw it.
Yeah, I'm not wasting my limited energy on that. But just for moving a flint around or whatever.
You keep going.
Yeah, I'll keep going on it, but
maybe that's why they put the logs first, right? Because they know it's like, we got to put the hardware, otherwise they'll stop. I don't know.
Yeah. Heck, they might not have ever gotten to the logs if they put the flint first, based on
that's true.
Based on how confused all four of them looked,
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
So, all right. Well, before we get to our next segment here, I don't know, Heidi, have we covered everything, or Jessica, have we covered everything you want to talk about, or is there anything else before we get to our Jeff Probst segment?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things that will come up during the rules. So I have a sneaking suspicion that we can probably move on and we'll still touch upon all of those things that we still want to talk about.
Okay. So for new listeners, again, we have a regular segment called Jeff Probst is Wrong About Blank. And Jeff started the season when he told Dalton Ross in an interview that they decided to help fill the extra 20 minutes of screen time in the longer episodes by adding in things like a more complicated idol, which we saw at the beginning of the week, of this week. Now, this immediately made many of us shake our heads in dismay, or in my case, make a TikTok, because no, Jeff, that's not what we want in our longer episodes. We want more from the players. We want more strategy, more camp life. But Jeff literally said, no, production can't count on the players to provide that. So they have to force
I'm just going to say that.
Oh, I know. This is the same production that cut out huge chunks of relationships and strategies from multiple players last season, including Jamie, Lauren, and you, Heidi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my God, I can say so much about that. However, I will say, and I think, Jessica, I saw maybe your Twitters and talked a little bit about that, and I agree. I do like the pacing. It felt like the pacing. Now, this is the first episode, so we don't know how that's going to reflect later on. Mm-hmm. But the pacing felt a little bit more natural, kind of.
Yes. It was more like moments to just kind of enjoy the players as opposed to like trying to keep up with like what's happening next.
Yes. And we did see snippets of the camps from all three tribes, which I appreciate, because most of the time, especially last year, they caught a lot. Soka, because we kept winning at the beginning, they didn't show a whole lot of
You
Soka.
never saw them. Yes.
So nobody knew anything about us until much later, right? So that is one of those
we
that
knew
I
about
agree.
a couple of you, but that was it,
Yeah, well, the showmans and all of that, right?
Exactly.
But agreed, 100%. Like in Soka, we had so much fun. There was so much content, but none of it made it. Now to the 90-minute episode, I agree. I mean, I don't think the idol took that long.
This one did not. This one did not. But he talked about, when he talked about it in his interview, he was like, it'll be multiple steps. So we'll show lots of that. And we might show more of the boat journey and this and that. But the thing is, he always talks about how they do such a great job in casting. He even did it again in his interview with Mike Bloom for Parade, saying, I think you have to start with a nod to Jesse Tannenbaum and the Survivor casting department. All of the great moments of that first episode are because of the players, not because of any twist, because of what the players did with the game. And it's like, okay, I know this is the Jeff is wrong segment, but Jeff, you were right about that. So then why not keep trusting them through the game? We saw that Lulu group. They could keep us entertained for days. And we saw the other two tribes, but we didn't see that much about them. I don't feel like I know that much about them. So I really hope it's not what Jeff said. It's not all idols and advantage boat trips and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I do hope that it is just giving the players what they deserve, and that's an opportunity to have their games be understood and seen, because the last thing that is fair to any player is when they're watching it play back in their own house and say, well, that's not how that actually went down, and that's not how that actually happened. That is incredibly frustrating.
Heidi, I know it happened to you. I would say things on the podcast or on Twitter, and a little birdie would be like, yes, that is what happened. You told me after the season. Yes, you were right, David. This is what happened. I just couldn't say anything at the time,
Yeah.
And
A lot of people ask me about the edit, and in all honesty, from my side of things, it actually plays out beautifully for me because it was I got a positive edit. Some people it's like, oh, but you weren't shown that much. But you know what? I have a life. I'm a busy person. So maybe not getting that crazy time made my life continue like okay, right? So
I agree wholeheartedly. Yes.
So in all honesty, it wasn't a bad thing for me. They showed really good moments, but definitely there was a lot more. Now I will tell you and I'm gonna connect this with Hannah, right? Or maybe with Emily, that my strategy, I talk a lot. I mean, you don't get in Survivor for being shy. Let's be honest here, right?
That's fair.
So, and I am an open book, right? But when I went to Survivor, I was like, I'm the oldest female. I'm the engineer. I'm the mom. I have all the negative tags for someone to go out first or second, right? So for me, it was like, okay, I gotta shut up and I gotta learn about what's making other people happy. What topics do they like? What makes them happy? So then I can talk about those things, right? So to the fact that I was like a little bit quiet at the beginning and all of that, it's true. I was that person because that was part of my strategy. Otherwise, I would have been voted off first, second, or third, right? So it was my strategy and I went in it with it, right? Versus Emily, like, here you go, vote me next, because I went against Bruce. So it's like one of those where you do have to learn to control your emotions, and that was what I did in my game. So if you saw me a little under in Soka, I was under in Soka very much on purpose.
Yeah.
Oh, I've talked about that too. I was told before I went out there, keep Jessica in the box. Yeah. Because people I work with were like, I don't know what you're doing, but you better keep Jessica in the box. And so, yes, you need to be mindful of how you can be perceived, because David and I have said this time and time again. Perception is reality. Regardless of how you actually are, if that's the way you are perceived, then that is how people are going to believe that you are. So if you don't know that about yourself, then yes, you're going to find yourself in an Emily situation.
How old, Jessica, when you were in the show, how old were you?
Was I 38? Maybe.
Okay.
I think I was 38.
Remember, her whole season was based on age. So it wasn't like
that's right.
I mean, she was among the, older group.
Here's why I asked the question, right? I look at myself, I control my emotions. It helped me. That's how I made it that far, right? I do think Heidi, me, myself, and I in my 20s, early 20s, I would have been a wreck. Okay. I do think there's something very admirable for. I love the people that go there very young and can manage their emotions that well. I would not been able to do that in my early 20s, right? So there is something about experience, and that gives you a little edge. Perhaps that may be why we put a target on our backs right away, right? Because it's hard to connect. I was in my 40s and everyone was under their 35s. So it's like, how do you connect with someone that you're... I will never forget, I told Carson, oh my God, I could be your mother, right? So how do you connect with someone that could be your kid, right?
Right.
So there is something about maybe hard to connect when you have such a big gap. But if you listen to them, what is it that they like? There's always something you can connect with every player out there. Anyway, I went on a tangent on the age and all of that, but honestly,
now you have me even think. I don't even remember how old I was when I went out there. Maybe I was 36. I honestly can't even remember at this point. Anyway, but I was definitely older than 35.
Yeah,
I can say that.
And so, I mean, and just to round out this topic, at least, Heidi, we got to see, you were purposely being under the radar. It would have been nice to see like a confessional with them asking you, hey, what's your plan? And you saying that so we knew. But because I'm just out here like surmising and not finding out till afterwards, like, oh, yes, I was right. But then you have like Jamie and Lauren, and we're sitting here going, we figured they were doing something, and we eventually figured out what that something was. We disagreed with some of what they were doing because they were basically fooled, but they were doing something. Other people were just like, those two are literally doing nothing. It's like, no, just because you don't see it on TV doesn't mean they're not doing anything. And And so I felt worse for them because, I mean, literally Jamie's whole story arc was the fake idol, you know? And she was doing so many other things out there, as we later found out. And again, yes, from the production standpoint, she was used by the eventual winner.
Yeah.
You know, as kind of a backup alliance. And so, yeah, you know, backup alliances don't necessarily make it. Jessica, you know, I mean, Jessica was not Adam's backup alliance. She was his close alliance, but she didn't even get mentioned as being anywhere close to him.
Not even once.
So the closest was at one point, someone said, we're going to vote this way. And Jessica was like, okay, I'll go talk to Adam. That was the closest that we got to even knowing they ever even spoke to each other. And so, yeah, I hope that's what I would like to see from this.
I agree.
More from the people.
Now, the relationships do matter out there. And if they don't show anything from those relationships, then you're like guessing. Maybe like Heidi and Jam are probably working together secretly because they're from the same country. They speak the same language. They have a lot of similarities. I don't know if they ever showed us talking, and we try to cover it from every single player, right? But to your point, it's like we knew we couldn't show that relationship on the island, but there is something so special there. So you can kind of guess that we had some connection. But then Jamie and Lauren, all you can guess is like, okay, they were Ratu, they were strong on Ratu, and they had nobody else, so they had to be together. But they never show. Or perhaps Jamie with Jam, that was so important for the storyline, and I don't even think they showed them together. No, so really. Yes, I agree 100%.
Yeah. Now, I just mentioned Adam, and as we continue in the Jeff Probst is wrong, you know, going a little longer in this section than I thought we would, but Jeff had some strong words for our friend Adam Klein. He did not name him, but he made it clear who he was talking about. This was on Jeff's podcast, and another producer went after Adam in an earlier Dalton Ross interview too. They really don't like Adam helping people in casting. And the thing is, I feel like it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what he does, and some other, at least one other player in particular, has said something publicly about this too. Again, a misunderstanding. It's not like Adam's out there trying to say, hey, you should act this way so that they will cast you. He's not trying to get them to fool casting. He's trying to help them have a better understanding of themselves and how they can express that. And so I think that, you know, I don't know why Jeff is coming so hard. It feels to me, and maybe this is wrong, it feels like they were pissed off at themselves for messing up with casting Hannah, and for some reason they took it out on Adam, even though he had nothing to do with this.
And that would be fair if he was actually, if Hannah was one of the people that he had worked
but he
with,
wasn't. That's what I'm saying.
Wasn't right. Yeah.
I mean, one former player tweeted, I love Jeff, but guarantee you Adam wouldn't have messed up like the casting director that put Hannah on the show. And so that's why I'm not naming the former player. But I do think they usually do a good job. Hannah was an obvious miss. And Jeff even told Dalton Ross that after she quit. He said, the first call I made was to Jesse Tannenbaum and Dr. Liza, our head psychologist, to say, add this into our data because we got it wrong. We missed something with Hannah. She shouldn't have been here on the show. Now, I'm not sure what the data in question were, but he was right. You know, as we'll discuss in just a few minutes here, Hannah even told Gordon Holmes, I applied on a whim. I went out on a whim. Survivor casting should have caught that whim.
Yeah, 100%. I will say, though, she does seem to be someone who is well-spoken and something that Heidi has already referenced. This is part of Survivor. If you are well-spoken, that can be seen as a great type of person to cast for TV entertainment and also for the game. And so who knows if that's what they kind of got caught up in, is this idea of, well, look, she can have a conversation and she can hold her own and she's got a sense of self. And so that might have overshadowed the fact that she really was unprepared to play Survivor.
I mean, something very interesting about and I said at the beginning this would happen. I'm gonna talk about 44 for a second. And now I know all of them, right? I do know a lot of us are super fans, even me. And I talk about this in my interviews during 44. I am not someone who started watching from season 1. I started watching halfway through and I fell in love, and then I watch every season, but I'm a fan. So for me, there's just something so special when you have a lot of super fans out there, because we will talk about things that I feel like a normal just friends, they have no idea about certain things that happen in season 3, season 4, whatever. But then we have the right people. We can talk about anything Survivor, and we all knew what we were talking about. So there's something so beautiful to cast people who do have experience. Now, I think you bring a little of diversity when you bring some people who are new to the show, right? Like, I think they said Emily was kind of new to the show or whatever. I think it brings a juxtaposition that brings something very different, yet it's a bit of a gamble, right? So I don't know. And I don't know if Hannah was a super fan or not. I don't know if she talked about that in her interviews. Do you know? Because maybe she wasn't a super fan, because if you're a super fan, you better believe you're trying to prep for as much as you possibly can, because you know so much about the game.
The term super fan has kind of changed its meaning, because super fan used to be I watched from the beginning or near the beginning, or even, like you said, I mean, it's been on for 44 seasons now. It's hard to watch from the beginning, but now the people who, some of the people who were pandemic watchers and then binged everything call themselves super fans. Like there was one person on Big Brother who watched all the Big Brother seasons in 6 months. And she said, I'm a super fan. And she knew a lot. Don't get me wrong. She knew a lot, and she knew a lot about Survivor. But I don't know what the official definition of super fan is, or, Adam. Adam was the super duper fan. I think Brandon is the super duper duper fan. But it's just hard to say, because, sometimes if you binge watch, you can pick up things. But I think there's a lot more to listening to podcasts, reading articles, getting that analysis, not just blasting through a season without it. And I've learned that myself with Big Brother. There were a couple of seasons that I had missed in there. Never missed any Survivor, but during some downtime after my website shut down, I just needed a break. So I missed a couple of seasons. I've gone back and rewatched those seasons. And even as I'm analyzing them in my head, I know I would get a lot more out of the season if I went back and listened to the podcasts and watched, read the articles and was doing that myself, rather than just boom, 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 going through them.
Analyzing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, I, of course, have a few other thoughts, but I have or will be putting those in TikTok, so people can check those out at David Bloomberg TV. But before we see where everything really started to go wrong for Hannah, we do need to mention that the rules come in a much more colorful version in poster form. And yes, Jessica's pointing to it, and there's behind me and on the screen. And you can go to robhasawebsite.com/YXLostFeed, scroll down to the poster, click on it, and our shipping department, who is
slow.
I was going to say not busy at all. Our shipping department will rush it out to you. Rush being
I will apologize to the there was one individual who I think received his a week late, so I apologize on that. I have another one in the hopper that I have to get out. Okay. So my life has been a little bit
hurry up, shipping
hectic.
Department. Come on.
I know, but I promise you that it's on its way. Yes, it's on its way. So thank you for the support. Thank you for the orders. We really appreciate it very much. And I promise you, when you order, you are going to get it. And I will say I'm usually within, the 3 days of getting it out, but just, I've been a little distracted. So,
and you can also, if you want to wear your rules, much like I am, on a poster, you can scroll down and order the T-shirt. That's a different shipping department, so that's that's or you can wear the rules in a checklist form, much like my mug, but they don't have the mugs anymore, but they do have the t-shirts. So you could do that. Again, that is at robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed.
Yes.
All right.
Buy it. Yes, let's do this.
We're
only an hour in.
Only.
Well, before we see, wait, no, I said that already. Hannah, we're an hour in. Hannah said in her interviews that coming in, she wanted to be there. She wanted to play. In her pregame interview, she was excited. She just didn't anticipate how she would react. In that way, we've seen other players react poorly too. They just did so in a way that got them voted out immediately instead. Some people come in unprepared strategically. Some come unprepared socially. Some come unprepared physically. What were the biggest ways Hannah was unprepared? It's time to figure out why Hannah lost. Now, we begin with the first and most important rule, which is to scheme and plot. Now, some may say, wait, how can you say that's the most important rule here when Hannah didn't even really get to that? And to anyone who might say that, I have a couple of answers. First, it's more of a general statement. Second, it also did, in fact, play a role in her quit because Hannah told Dalton Russ, I also know that Survivor is a cutthroat game, but I didn't like feeling like I had to sacrifice some of my integrity, that word, to go behind the backs of people and lie again.
Heidi's cringing down there.
Yes.
I know that.
I mean, it is called Survivor, you know.
Yeah.
You watch the show, but anyway.
Yeah, she said, I know that's the game. I know that conceptually, but going out there and realizing, oh, these are real people and I love them. I don't want to backstab them. I don't want to take this person's dream to further myself. I didn't know that until I got out there.
How do you not know that?
Right. That's the thing. I know she focused on lack of food and sleep, which we'll get to later. But this was one of the things weighing on Hannah's mind when she quit, in that she didn't actually want to play the game. Now, another shirt that I have that I'll wear occasionally, and you can also order, it doesn't have a direct link on the website, but you can click on one of the other shirts and order it. It says honesty, integrity, loyalty on the front. And then it says scheme and plot on the back, because that's what you do behind people's back. And it's, the idea is no, honesty, integrity, loyalty has very little to do with this game. And, you know, she, of all the things weighing on her mind, she didn't actually want to play the game. She loved them. They were 3 days in and she couldn't vote someone out because she
that was actually shocking to me when I heard that, because I will say that within those first few days, yes, you all of a sudden start to form a bond. You do start to realize who these people are because you have nothing else to do. There's no TV, there's no nothing. It's 24/7 and you're like piled on top of each other trying to not get rained on in a really crappy shelter that you built in a day. So there's a lot of bonding moments very quickly. But David and I have said this time and time again. The goal should be to go out and win. That's the goal. That's what you are out there to do, is to win Survivor. And if you are not willing to do the essence of Survivor is voting people out. That's the essence of what Survivor is. And if you are unable to do that because suddenly you feel a certain angst about it because you care for these people, then you are definitely playing the wrong game. Exactly. 100% playing the wrong game.
And I do like that people sometimes they say, excuse me, I want to play with integrity, try to be as honest as I can be, but I'm playing to win. So I can understand the aspects of like, I want to play with integrity, but I understand that's gonna go down the hole whenever I want to win, because you do whatever you can and you need to in order to survive. I will never forget when I left my house to start this journey. When we had to fly to LA first to quarantine, but I would remember when I did that, one of the last things I told my kids is, don't forget, when I leave there, I am going to do everything I possibly can to actually win this game, which means I could be super nice, I could be a villain, I could be whatever they want me to be, but I'm gonna be playing for myself, right? So there's one of those things where you're gonna have to stop people on the back because that's what the game is about. So I don't know what game she was thinking she was gonna play, but if she started with that, it was probably an insight. She was either quitting or not making it too far.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she, this is only the first of the items, like I said, about her being unprepared, but she indicated in her pregame interview that she thought she could be manipulative. But then when she got there, like so much else, it was, theory versus reality.
Right.
Now, she's not the first person to have this happen,
Right.
but every Survivor player should know you have to do this before going in. And yeah, Heidi, I love what you said to your kids, because other people are like, well, I'm out here and my kids are watching and I wouldn't want them to see me lie. It's like, no, it's a game. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's what you have to do.
So, and in my case, I don't prep just myself and my husband. I gotta prep the kids, right?
Right.
I don't know what's gonna happen. So
Right.
I, even from the get-go, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna do whatever I have to win the game. So I was there to play the game, but it makes you wonder, is everyone there to win the game? I don't know. So I will, and I see the old school Survivor shirt.
I had to wear this. This is necessary.
So I was talking this week actually with some old school survivors from like very early season 3 perhaps, and some of them, they always say, back in the day we didn't have the Facebook, the social medias, right, the Instagram, whatever. So we had nothing, but we were just playing to win the game, right?
Yes.
So then it wasn't like I'm playing to have camera time or to be an influencer. So they're saying, how the new school, there's a mixed bag there, because there's people who may be there for certain things that may not be necessarily winning the game, or maybe didn't care. And I'm like, I'm in the new school, right? But I was definitely there to win the game, which is why if you really want to go in this game and win, you have to prep everything you possibly can, and that includes your psyche, right? That includes mentally. And I know that Hannah talked about reading some books. That is not enough. You're gonna have to listen to the podcast so you can hear all the strategizing behind what most players do. So anyway, I'm going on a tangent there, but that's part of the preparation. You gotta do everything you can to even backstab people left and right, because it's part of the game.
Yeah, one thing I will say is, there wasn't social media at the time, but the early seasons had, I would say, a higher percentage of what people refer to as mactors, the model actors, who were just there to try to get famous. And so now those are not the people you're going to run into these days at a Survivor event, because those people, a lot of them don't care about Survivor anymore. They were there to get famous, and that's all they cared about. Now it's just a different way of getting famous, but
in a different way.
Yeah. Back in those days, pretty much, I mean, there wasn't podcasts, there wasn't social media. There was like websites like mine, and so they would all get on and read my articles, and then I'd hear about it, either later or in emails or something like that. And so that was, funny. I have told the story before, when I went to the Amazon finale and met Jenna and Heidi, both of whom I had written many, many bad things about. And and Rob, who, knew all my stuff. He was, of course, the first person to bring my rules into pregame Ponderosa. He told them, you want to read this website, knowing full well what I was saying about that. So he was egging them on to get them to
Of course he was. That's a very Rob move.
Yeah. And so so yeah, that was, like I said, oh God, they would have taken a beating in social media at that time, because they took a beating just on regular media. But
for the record, I'm Rob's wife, favorite Heidi. Just saying it out loud.
Oh, okay. All right.
That is an incredible distinction to have.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to distract you, but you said Heidi. I was like, oh no, not me. Okay.
Yeah, the other Heidi. Yeah. The one who we never could have predicted would probably end up being the richest Survivor player.
Right on.
Having married a baseball player, a very good baseball player, who even played for the Cubs for a little while. But circling back to this, one place Hannah actually succeeded in the first rule was her actual exit. Because we've had players try to quit before, but their tribe mates wouldn't let them, including Amazon that we were just talking about, because it didn't coincide with the tribe's plans. And an interesting part of her interview with Dalton Ross was, Jeff asked everyone at tribal council if they would vote for her, and they said no. And like he went down the line, they're like, no, I'm not voting for Hannah. No, I'm not voting for Hannah. And that's when Hannah said what we saw on TV, which was, you don't have to vote for me in order for me to leave, which pretty much sealed the deal. So she strategized her own demise.
She did. Good job, Hannah.
Yeah.
I still, as a player, and if I would have been an ally, right? Maybe Brandon was an ally. I would have liked to vote. I would have loved to see, okay, they put my name out there. I better I feel like it would have given us some insight as a player. So I think even though it's like, okay, she wants to quit and all of that, I get what they did. But at the same time, it's like, let's put it through a vote. Like, I think I would have pushed as a player to still vote because it would have given you insights from what's happening. It was almost like they wasted the tribal council. They got to see how beautiful it looks, but they got no information what's in people's head. Part of surviving the tribal council is getting some information of why they're voting, who's going to play the shot in the dark. Was Brandon going to really play it? I feel like they missed an opportunity to get information. And I totally would have been like, can we still please go through a vote? Maybe they should have pushed for that a little bit so they can get insights, maybe not from Hannah, but from other people. And maybe, who knows, maybe the votes would have not gone Hannah's way, right?
Well, that's what I think they were worried about, because then she indicated she would, at the time, she indicated she would have just quit then, and then they'd have been down to 4. Now, I think that if they had known that Kendra had a vote, excuse me, because we talked about this a little bit, that, the for people who might not have heard from other podcasts, or, that there was this twist where Kendra came over to their camp and met with them for a few hours and then secretly cast a vote in tree mail. But they didn't know that part. I think if they had known that Kendra had a vote, they might have said, no, we want to do the full voting, because then they would have gotten to find out what Kendra
did
vote was. Right. Like you said, would Brandon have used the shot in the dark? All these things. Now, also, I think from a pure production standpoint, if they had gone through all that, they'd have had to chop out like 5 to 10 minutes of other time. So who knows what they would have cut and what we wouldn't have enjoyed. So let's
talk about Kendra's vote, because Jeff in his podcast told us she voted for Brandon. Right? Yes. And she is coming from the Blue tribe. And then immediately we're like, why? Right? Why Brandon? Right? And my family is like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, if you're a player and they're going to read this and they probably will guess, and I don't know if they were going to tell them it was Kendra or not, but they would probably guess it was going to be her. She's trying to make friends, not enemies, with the Brandon vote, because my family was saying, she should have voted for like someone strong. And I get that concept. But if Yellow Tribe is the one seeing the extra vote, you're making enemies if you vote for Sabaya or someone who's too strong, right? So I think what Kendra's thinking, and I'm speculating here, but the Kendra thinking was, okay, I'm going to try to get allies because, hey, I'm voting the person that clearly had issues with the physical challenges. Right. So I'm just, plus, she's probably trying not to waste her vote, right? So if you try to put your mind into the Yellow Tribe, you're like, they're probably going for Emily or Brandon, right? You can kind of see the dynamics there from the get-go. So she wants her vote to count. But yeah, I think from the Brandon vote, it probably would have been gaining an enemy with Brandon, but everyone else would have been like, okay, thank you. At the very least, you try to help us out there. That's kind of my thinking with the Kendra vote.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, she was talking to them, so they might have indicated that that's how they were leaning at that time, and things changed. I mean, they went back and forth. We heard about that. The other thing I was thinking was, I mean, yeah, Brandon looked weaker in the challenges, but God, keep Emily in there to keep ripping them apart from the inside.
Yes.
Yeah,
the morale.
Too.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, we can move into and perhaps quickly out of the second rule, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Given the way she went out and what we've already said about her scheming and plotting, unless you two have anything, I think we can quickly move past this one.
Yeah.
I think we can quickly move past this one.
Okay. All right. So
there was really not
not a
much
whole
to
lot
say
there.
Yeah.
No.
So the third rule tells players to be flexible, and it's pretty obvious that Hannah was not. Once she
No,
decided
she's
she
not.
was going, that was it. Brandon seemed to talk her down several times, but she kept coming back to it. She acknowledged in interviews that she'd heard once you get past the first few days of not eating, the body adapts somewhat. But even knowing that, she didn't want to push to that point. She didn't want to be there. Like you said earlier, Heidi, in her mind, she looked at herself and said, no, this isn't where I want to be. And, there is at least the upside that she saved one of the two people who did want to be there. But, from the standpoint of her own game, that was it,
Yeah. I think this one is so important for the players. Flexible, adaptable. I see those in the same line, right? Where this game, if you as a person do not know how to be flexible, maybe this is not the right game for you because in all or maybe find techniques to be more flexible within who you are. And I think that flexibility and adaptability as a player is what makes good players make it all the way to the end and maybe win. I don't think you can go in this game without being flexible. You will not survive too long because everything is about, flexing who you are as a person in order to make it far. And the non-eating part, I don't know if this is the right time to talk about that. Maybe we'll get there later, but there's a lot to be said for the non-eating part.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think, and I do think too, that even when she was given an opportunity to be flexible, when she was talking to Brandon, she then just shot that down. And it was, it wasn't even like she was willing to consider what he was saying, because he was really trying to give her an opportunity, push through, it'll be okay. I'm at 0 right now as well, but I want to keep doing this and I want to keep going. And then she just kept convincing herself, but I would rather be on my couch, and it would be so nice if I could eat something. And when you start filling yourself with those thoughts, because I can remember having very similar thoughts. I remember very distinctly sitting in our shelter being pummeled with rain and just being soaking wet and cold and huddled with everyone in the middle of the night and just thinking to myself, I can't even get up and walk to the refrigerator because there isn't one, it's like you have to realize about where you are in the world, and you have to take those thoughts and just kind of push them aside and say, well, I will get through this, and there will be the next day, and I will get through that. And instead she was letting herself fall into those thoughts instead of the ones Brandon was trying to get her to think about and focus on. And so she wouldn't even allow herself to be flexible. It was like she had completely made up her mind and then just kept convincing herself that this was the right thing for her.
Yeah. And I can certainly understand that mindset because I remember, and I know this has happened to me multiple times before, but when I was trying to choose my retirement date, at first I was like, well, okay, I can retire in October, but maybe I'll work an extra year, just to gather up extra money or whatever. And then I was like, well, no, maybe I'll just work till the end of this year. And then I did some more math and realized I could actually retire at the end of May. And I was talking to a close friend of mine at work, this same lawyer, and I was saying, well, I don't know that I will, but and she said, David, I know you. It's in your head. It's not going out of your head. You are considering it, which means you are going to do it. Once you have gotten into your head, you can stop working and just be at home as of the end of May. That's it. You're done. And she was absolutely right. And
so you're saying you're not flexible?
Oh, I was flexible. All right. I was so flexible. I got out of there as soon as possible because my boss was not pretending to be nice. I actually had to scheme and plot my way to get out at the end of May.
Nice.
Look at you following your own rules. I love that for you.
One more thing.
Did you see the poster on my wall over here? I'm scheming and plotting.
Yeah.
I like it.
Love
I like
that.
it. One more thing about her, because she said something in the episode like, where is the shelter? Where are the shelter people, right? She's waiting for someone to build a shelter for her. And that is one of those where girl, if there's no one there, you do it, right?
Yeah.
And for anybody out there, including Brandon, right? Like if there's not a shelter person, you become the shelter person because you have no other choice. So it's one of those where you have to learn to be flexible. If there's no one there to do it, you do it yourself because it's going to make your life better, right? So that's part of why being flexible makes everything better too. Like if she would have done some things to get her environment there a little bit more comfortable, maybe she would have not quit. All right. So all the rules really go together here.
Right.
So, anyway.
Right. Now, another way she wasn't flexible, she told pretty much every interviewer that leading up to tribal council, she was open with her tribe mates that she would not write Brandon's name down. And she admitted to Rob, she even said it's not very good survivor play. And yeah. So whether she knew it or not, she was talking about this rule. And, those of us who like Brandon are happy about it, but she was also right. Not good survivor play.
So let me bring my story to here, because you said it came to me. A lot of people gave me such a hard time for why I voted on Danny, right? And I knew what I was doing, for the record, right? So it's like, why would you vote for Danny? So the reason I did it very intentionally, and I went against a rule, which is like I was trying to send a signal. I voted for Danny not knowing he was going to go home, okay? Because we all knew who was going home that moment, which was Franny, by the way, and I told Franny and she didn't believe me, but I voted for Danny to tell everyone else, I am willing to show you that I am not just Danny's puppet. I'm just not going to be, I am flexible with my game too, right? He's my ally, but I'm showing everyone else that I could put his name down. I'm not attached to him the way they thought I was. So it was super important for me to give a signal to everyone else. Now, a lot of that wasn't shown, so a lot of people are like,
we're all sitting here like,
thinking?
What is she doing here? Was she totally left out? I mean, I think all we could speculate was nobody told her what was going on. What's happening?
Yeah,
here?
This is what happens when they leave out big chunks of the
Yeah.
story. Yeah.
Yes. And I think at that time I probably had my idol in my pocket already. So if I was so clueless, I either would have played it or maybe like would have said something else. It was very internal, but the people I was trying to align with to break with Soka, because Soka it was self-imploding, right? I knew how to break through. And that helped me make some alliances with other people, like some of the Tika 3, perhaps. So it's one of those where I knew it was not going to be seen so interesting. Here's the interesting part that I was told later. Danny was so trusting of me that when he went to Ponderosa, even in the game, everyone told him it was Heidi. And I was like, no. I was lying my way out of that one, right? Even when he went to Ponderosa after he got out of the game, everyone in Ponderosa told him it was Heidi. And he's like, no way it was Heidi. So he didn't even believe the people after the game. So he asked me at the very last tribal council, like, did you vote for me? Because he was confirming it if it was true. And that's when he found out it was me, because I was the one who told him. But he didn't believe the people even outside the game. But anyway, that was a quick tangent on 44.
I believe that helped you earn his vote too, as a matter of fact.
Yes. Anyway, back to 45, but it's one of those where flexibility is super important.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, but we can leave that rule and go to the fourth rule, which tells players another very important thing, not to let their emotions control them. And as you said earlier, it's kind of obvious we have a big issue here with Hannah.
Yeah.
She literally told Mike Bloom, I couldn't control my emotions, which was very new for me. Now, she was talking a bit differently than we normally do, because we usually mean your emotions shouldn't control your game decisions. But she truly couldn't control her emotions themselves. As she continued, I just could not stop crying on that island. So I'd be crying, then I'd be laughing and having a great time. And so I was going back and forth. Like I shared in one of the confessionals, 1 minute I really want to leave, and 1 minute I'm like, this is wonderful, I'm on Survivor. What's interesting to me is that Hannah's a therapist, and she kind of analyzed herself from that position. I think, Heidi, you said this earlier. And she saw in herself that not only was she feeling terrible out there, but she knew it wouldn't change. And so she further told Mike, what you didn't see was it had monsooned for hours and we had no shelter. And again, when I watch it on TV, I'm like, oh, it's temporary pain. Just get through it. No, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And so that's what she was saying. Now, the part about not wanting to is somewhat interesting to me. I'm going to bring up, Heidi, you said you were going to bring up your season. I'm bringing up being retired again. Because one thing I've learned in retired life is I don't have to do the things that I don't want to do. And I know it sounds a little silly to say, but when you have a job, there are things you literally have to do or you'll get fired or get in trouble. Like I said, my boss was not good at pretending to be nice. And so now if there's something I don't want to do, I don't, and it seems,
I'm jealous.
Yes,
Me
I know.
Me too.
And it seems like that's where Hannah was, she was like, wait, I'm here on Survivor. People are going to be mad at me, but I don't want to do it. So I don't have to. And
I know. But I also feel like it's kind of a cop-out, right?
I mean,
in this circumstance, it is,
yes.
It's kind of a cop-out because this is what you did sign up for.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You knew that this is what you were doing. And I understand that there's an adjustment period because Heidi,
right.
You talked about this. I mean, you're going 3 days without anything. You don't have a flint, you don't have a machete, you literally have nothing. And this is something you have to acclimate to. You have to give yourself time. And she had already convinced herself, nope, it's just not going to get any better. Maybe it would have, maybe
exactly.
she would have.
I think the worst part is she knew it was only temporary. She knew it would get better. And she still was like, yeah, but I don't want to wait for it.
Right. And like, so to me, I just, no, like that is not, and I know that in one of her interviews, she was talking about if she was talking to one of her patients and this is what they were telling her, then she would be giving them the same type of advice, like don't do anything that you don't want to do. But that's not necessarily what it is. It's not that she didn't want to do it. She wasn't willing to try to do it. And I think there's a very big difference there.
Yeah. Oh my God. Right on. I was also saying, and maybe because I love fire and you probably clearly can tell that, but I was like, how didn't they, I didn't see it. Maybe they just didn't show it. Nobody tried to make fire. I mean, do it with your glasses. Do it.
Right. I know. There's 5 people that wear glasses out on that island.
Yeah.
Come on.
And I understand that it's hard. Okay. I get it. Not making fire with nothing. It is hard and it takes a lot of energy, but there's something beautiful about the fire, especially at night when it gets cold. People, it's Fiji. I get it. It's warm, but at night, the beach and the breeze, it gets cold. You don't have a blanket, right? So to me, I was like, how come nobody try to make a fire? At the very least, a little attempt. Again, maybe they didn't show it and they tried, but that was one that surprised me too, because I totally would have tried, even if it's just with the glasses, at the very least, try.
Yeah, anyway. It's possible, like they said, they didn't, or like she said, they didn't show that it monsooned out there for a long time. So it's possible they had like no dry wood. I mean, even in the secret scene for the one tribe that did have a flint, it took them, I mean, they said 8 hours. I don't know if that's really, it was an exaggeration or whatever, but it took them a long time of trying before they were able to get a fire that took. So, but yeah, it would be good to know, did they try? Did they do things to make it better? Or did she just say, no, this isn't for me? And I have to say, I'll never be on Survivor, almost certainly, mostly due to health issues. They'll never let me on. But if I could go on, one thing that holds me back is this issue. Sitting out there in the pouring rain, in the cold, knowing how much I hate being cold and wet. Even knowing it's temporary, sitting here thinking, could I go through that? But the difference is I'm sitting here thinking about that.
Yes.
I'm not saying, I'll worry about it when I get out there.
That's right.
And that's what she did. Yes. She put off everything that she needed to prepare herself for ahead of time to just be like, no, I guess we'll see what happens. It's kind of like, I'm going to go watch this movie. I don't know if I'll like it, but whatever. I can just leave if I don't. Like, no, that's not what this is.
Right. And that's the thing, an interesting part of her reaction was she told Mike Bloom in the pregame, for me, a lot of the prep has been emotional. And this is something you brought up, Jessica. I purposefully read books that were about resilience in terms of emotional resilience, physical resilience, mind over body kind of stuff. And then a lot of grounding mindfulness stuff because I think that's going to give me a huge edge. If I'm able to just stay grounded out there, because I think people will lose their marbles. It just kind of goes to show there's what you read in a book and there's what you experience for real, and they might not be the same.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right on, right on. Emotions, it takes over this game. And actually, the non-eating part, I get the fact that when you don't eat, it gets harder. And I went through this, right? It gets harder to control your emotions, but the level of control that you can have, it's what really makes you successful in this game, because emotions is everything out there. But if you learn to control it, you could do so much strategizing behind in this game. So I do think don't let your emotions control you will be, for me, it would be number one of the list, because I think it's like the most important one.
He's rewriting your rules.
It's already on the poster. It's on the poster. It can't change.
No, but in general, like that one, and it's in the center, right? So it's like it's in the center and pretty big. I think it's because it's really important to learn to control your emotions and find techniques how to do it. Put yourself into those weird scenarios, right, where you may have to control your emotions to get through. Put yourself in there, because that's a really important one. And clearly she just didn't have it in her.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, the fifth rule reminds players that they need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. Obviously, Hannah has made a lot of people mad outside the game. But Heidi, what did you think of how she was doing inside the game?
How, Hannah?
Yeah.
Oh, we can talk about this a lot. You can clearly, she played nice with Brandon, right? I think like she was having some sort of connection with Brandon. I do think like her emotions were probably taking over. So it goes back to number 4. But I do think there's so much. I talked about it already. Like, if no one is building a shelter for you, you don't wait for anybody to build a shelter for you. You do it yourself. So take control over your own thing.
You don't just sweep. You don't just sweep the ground.
So let's talk about that, because Jamie and Lauren were well known for her sweeping at their tribe, right? And I get why we do it. I mean, we all did it. The reason you do it is there's bugs and things under the leaves, so you don't want to like sleep or cook where they didn't have fire, so they probably didn't cook. But they actually had to like clean, because you want to make sure there's not bugs around them, especially if you're sleeping in that area. So I get that, but there's so much more that could make your life comfortable, right?
Yeah.
So to that point, it's like pretend to be nice and play the social game. I do think the only connection that we saw there was with Brandon. They didn't show anything else with the rest of them. So it makes you wonder if she was so into her emotions that she didn't really connect with other people. I don't know. That's a hard one. She was likable and she was well spoken, right? But other than that, you can tell that her emotions took over everything in her game, unfortunately.
Well, and how about the fact that even though this was removed from the episode, we learned about it later when the additional person, Kendra, when Kendra came, she saw Kendra and immediately walked away and like went into the woods so she wouldn't speak to her, because she was upset that someone full of energy and bubbly and like was happy was arriving. And she's like, no, I don't want this in my world right now. And just like walked away. Again, not how you're going to win points with people from the other tribe if you are unwilling to even pretend to say hi to them and act as if you were pleased to see them, but walk away instead.
Yeah.
Such a missed opportunity there.
Yes. Yeah, I do think that she probably did get along well with him. I mean, she even said in her interview she enjoyed Emily. But Brandon, like you said, tried to convince her not to quit. Nobody wanted to vote her out. So that's a good sign from that standpoint.
Right.
Or it's a really bad sign for Emily. So I think she did fine. We just didn't see it because she was, we were focused on the spiraling aspect, and that definitely impacted, as you said.
What is going through the producer's mind? This is what I would love to see, to put the yellow tribe together. Lulu, right? Like, what is happening? Like, I don't understand
these tribes the way that they did. I was quite taken aback when you actually saw them all like next to each other. Like, this doesn't really seem to be an even split.
Yeah. They said, he, Jeff, I was it on the podcast? At some point talked about how they put all the pictures out and they move them around and they try to get them so they're, physically, socially, et cetera, even. But looking at this one, I don't know how you got that, conclusion.
Somebody shuffled those pictures after everyone left the room because they were like, I'm gonna mess with this right now, and we're gonna put all these people on yellow, and then just unbelievable. And then to have, I know we've already spoken, but then Emily being angry that the two strongest people, like, I don't know, like hit it off. Oops. Okay.
Not just hit it off, but they literally, Hannah said in one of her interviews, they put those two together. They're like, you two go do these things. You two go do those things. Right. And then she's like mad that they were together doing things. So,
And if you are not Emily, because clearly she was pitching for breaking the two of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are not, let's say you're Hannah or Brandon or whatever, right? You're like, yeah, I don't think I'm voting off the two strong players. We're pretty wild.
We need them.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, I will tell you, and I have a soft spot for it, and I'm going to butcher her name, Sabaya. Is that how you would say
Nope, you got it.
So I think they were getting volunteers for the Sweat and Savvy, and she volunteered, and she's a girl, and I was like, yes, girl, I love you already. Do it. And they did pretty well, even though they didn't get it, right? So just in general, shout out for her, because I love her pre-game interviews.
Oh yeah, she was so enjoyable.
She connected with a lot of people, because I know a lot of Survivor people who love her already, and we don't even know her. So yeah, it was cool to see her volunteering for that part. But she probably thought, oh my God, I better volunteer because nobody here is going to do better than me. Let's be honest, right? So
I thought it was because the aliens told her to volunteer.
But okay, can we just spend 2 seconds?
Probably not, but yeah, okay.
No, but like the whole pyramid thing, like that's something that is like, people have discussed that as like not the alien component, not necessarily, but like the I don't know, batteries and all stuff. Like people have talked about all of that stuff, and I don't know. I was like, this isn't that far fetched. There's been a lot of like just theories and not. Can you just listen fine, whatever. I'm just saying she didn't just come up with that in thin air. She was discussing what had been said about these things that exist. It's not like she was like, hey, here's my theory, and this is what I'm introducing to the world.
Yeah, she had seen it on like the History Channel, Ancient Aliens or something.
Yes,
like
and according to that program, everything is from aliens. So it's just a discussion that is being had. That's all.
But, and this is a good time to talk about it in this rule, because one of the subheadings of this rule is keep your politics and controversial beliefs to yourself. And so I don't feel like
I don't think we got the whole conversation. I think they were just talking about something.
And that's possible. They may have wanted to focus on Emily's reaction more than
and that's probably what
I know this isn't about Hannah. But
hold on. So Emily, that was a snippet of her controlling what she was saying, because she said it in the confessional. It was like the
only time she controlled.
Right? They gave us a little snippet, which makes you wonder if she's gonna get there. But they gave us a little snippet where she was able to control herself and said something like, "Oh, I think this is the first time ever I thought about it." Even though she's like, "Oh my God, what are they thinking?"
I mean, she did better than me. I was talking to someone on Twitter, and I said I'd have been biting my tongue so hard it would have bled. And someone was like, "Medevac, David has to be medevac for bleeding tongue," and so. I would have been the first medevac due to a conversation.
Oh my gosh, that would have been incredible.
That would have been epic.
Yeah. All right. Well, we could go to the 6th rule, which warns against being too much of a threat. Now, Jessica, I'm going to be honest here. I'm not sure how to answer this one, so I'm going to toss it to you. What do you think of her in this rule?
She was clearly not a threat. I'm just going to say it. And here's the thing. Hannah could have been that player that would never have been deemed a threat because of the way she presented herself. Clearly, she wasn't on anyone's radar right off the rip. She seemed to be getting along with people just fine. Like, she could have had a very kind of easy road just looking at the structure of her tribe. You got Emily over here that's saying whatever she wants to say to whoever is listening. And so, that's happening. You have Brandon, who's also like falling down in the challenges and blacking out. And so you already have two people that are the focus, right? And that are the focus. Mm-hmm. So in a group of 6, you can be like, this is easy sailing for me.
Yeah.
So she could have been that middle road and been just fine and never had been seen as a threat because there was no reason to be. And so, I just feel like that's not even a consideration just because of the way she ended up not taking advantage of the circumstances that were presented to her. I mean, how beautiful. You're on a group of 6 and 2 people already like putting targets on themselves. Great. Good for me. And she was like, no, wait, look at me. I want you to look over here instead. And so, I mean, the threat component can't even be considered because I do think that she could have been someone who would have never really been seen as a threat and just of, skied her way like right through.
I agree 100% with that because, and to piggyback with what you said, there's 6 of them. You have Emily and Brandon, right? That makes it 4. She could pair with Sean against the 2 strong ones. Let's say that could have happened. She could have easily been there in the middle, make it to merge. She had potential to make it really far with the exception that she didn't prepare for the game, right?
Yeah.
So it was one of those where she was in a really good position because she was likable. She wasn't the youngest. She wasn't the oldest. She wasn't the weakest. She wasn't the strong. It's a perfect position to sail through really far into this game. And we saw what happened. So she was not a threat. She could have utilized that for her game, and she missed that huge opportunity. So it's so sad that we get to talk about it in this way, but she missed it.
Yeah, I have literally nothing to add because the few notes that I did have for this rule, you guys hit them. So for Rule 7, now we finally get to the part that Heidi, you just mentioned again. It covers idols, advantages, and game mechanics. And this is where I thought most of the things that impacted Hannah fit the best, particularly the game mechanics portion, because any player should go into Survivor knowing what to expect and preparing for it. And by her own admission, she didn't do that in a variety of different ways.
Right.
Okay. She told Mike Bloom in her pregame interview, I sent in a 30-second video on my phone and I was like, this is why I think I should be on Survivor. And I just turned it over to the universe. And I was like, we'll see. If it's meant to be, it'll be. And then I commenced this casting process. And every step of the way, I was like, there's no way this is happening. This can't be real. I didn't plan or prep for this in any way. And then when Mike followed up and asked her some more, she said and this is, I had hinted at this earlier. She tried intermittent fasting and, quote, failed because I am a hungry bitch. So it seems like that should have been a big
That's a red
clue.
flag. That's a red flag.
Because she said this week when she talked to Mike, when I'm hungry, I shut down. And you know what? I didn't know that. Now I know. Sorry. But you did know.
Yeah,
and these are these threads that I'm talking about that we tied together here on this podcast. She added to Dalton Ross. What happened is, first and foremost, hunger. I couldn't anticipate what it would feel like after days. But it seems like she could anticipate it because she couldn't even do intermittent fasting. Yeah. Meanwhile, we had other players this season who purposely went without food for like long stretches. I think one said 60 hours to specifically prepare themselves. Others have said similar things in the past about trying to get their bodies ready to be without food. She didn't.
Yeah. I don't know, Jessica, what you did for yours. I heard the coffee. I agree 100%. I tried to fast for a couple days here and there to just get used to it. And I will tell you now, post game, my husband and I did fast. We fasted on last Monday, and my husband was like, "Oh, I'm starving," and I said, "I'm starving too, but remember, I did this for 26 days, so don't you dare to complain for one." But you do want to put yourself into those situations, and for the record, when you do that at home, you have everything else, right? You sleep in a bed, you sleep with everything. So if you want to push it, fast, sleep outside and see how you do, and put yourself into situations where you know you're gonna be uncomfortable because and go to the gym, fast and go to the gym.
Oh my God, I did so much swimming and so much working out and running and doing it when I was hungry. So, I mean, you get up in the morning and just start going, because you have to try to put yourself in those situations 100%. And you really like limit your calorie intake just to see what your body's going to do. And once we actually got out into the game and we were like in Ponderosa, then I was like, I'm eating everything I possibly can before I get out there to like just kind of like pack it up as much as I can. And they feed you fabulously. So that was great. But yes, you 100% have to put your body in these extreme situations without food and then say, okay, now I'm going to go run a couple of miles and see what happens.
Exactly.
Because otherwise you don't know what it's going to feel like.
Yeah, and you're uncomfortable, and guess what? You throw something else at it, because that's what the island does to you. That's not necessarily only the game. I think it's like the island does that to you. You have to work for every single little thing when you're living there, right? Yeah. Plus you throw the challenges, plus you throw the advantages and the twists and the emotional roller coaster and the tribal council. So if you're uncomfortable and you think you're uncomfortable, do something else that knows is going to make it even more uncomfortable, because that whole thing is what the game does to you. So to her point, she didn't do any of that.
Well, she did the opposite. She did something that made herself uncomfortable and then said, no, I'm not going to do that anymore.
And that's what she did in the game.
Nicotine.
Yeah. And right. Food wasn't even the most important thing she should have prepared to do without, because she was going through the caffeine withdrawal, which you talked about already, and nicotine withdrawal. She told Rob she knows she should have weaned off it months before going out there, but she didn't. She used patches or pouches or both. I don't know if there were transcription errors or whatever, but sometimes it said patches, sometimes pouches. And then until like a day or two before the game started, and then she was drinking coffee right up till then too. And I mean, imagine going through nicotine withdrawal and caffeine withdrawal and no food and no sleep. It's no wonder she crashed hard.
Yeah. Because you gotta prepare for that. Definitely prepare for that.
Yeah, and one of you mentioned sleep. And this isn't a topic that I've really thought about before, but Hannah said she normally sleeps with earplugs, a sleep mask, a sound machine, and a fan.
I know, right?
And so she even admitted it was delusional to think she could go on Survivor. She told Rob if she'd gotten even 1 hour of sleep, it might have been different, but Caleb and Sabaya both snored on top of everything else. So, okay, besides the fact what she did, maybe we have a new strategy. Snore so your opponents won't sleep.
So that's a jam.
I was going to say Jam won, and apparently his scoring was legendary.
Sorry, Jessica, go ahead.
No, I was there when the sleeping situations arrive and someone is doing something in their sleep. Like one of our people on my tribe had like restless leg syndrome. So it was like the leg, and it was just moving like all night long. And so you're like, okay, this is what I'm going to be experiencing now. But again, you have to mentally just say, this is where I'm at, and this is what I have to acclimate myself to. And I can't let this get in the way of what I need to be doing. And so if you're not game focused, then yeah, you're going to let that, oh, they're snoring now, I can't sleep. And that's going to get in the way, as opposed to, I can get through this. This is fine. I got back one night to get to the shelter after having a confessional, and everyone was already in the shelter, like laying down and sleeping. And there was literally no space for me to go except at the foot on this very, very small space. And I was like, well, I'm like a cat, just kind of like crawling in here, trying to like make my way and make a spot, because that's what you have to do. You just acclimate and you figure out how to make it work. And she just didn't want to take any of the opportunities to do that.
And I think, that tells me a little bit. And now it's hard to sleep. I gotta get it out. Sure. It's hard to sleep there, and you want to be in the game even when you're asleep.
Yeah. And you are. Yeah.
Yes, and I'll talk about that in a second. But that tells you she probably didn't do a whole lot during the day, because I was so exhausted that my body crashed. Like, even if I didn't want to fall asleep at the end, I would at the very least rest, because my body was crashing. You're all constantly looking for wood, constantly looking for food, constantly going for waters, because you want to have conversations with people. So it is not only mentally exhausting, it's physically exhausting too. So my body would crash at night. I could be on the ground, on the sand, and I would still try to get some rest, and my body would fall asleep only because I was crashing. It was exhausting. So that tells me like, okay, I get the fact that it's hard to sleep. You probably didn't sleep much because you didn't have anything or whatever, but your body would have been like, okay, let's pass out for at least a half hour because you know what? You've been doing so much during the day, you have to pass out. So I wonder what they did during the day, right? Because it's exhausting.
I mean, I don't know what the effects of like nicotine and caffeine withdrawal could be too.
That's
like
a good point.
If she was jittery or, anything else. Or the other thing is, now, I think after 2 days, I would fall asleep no matter what. But I know that like if I try to go to sleep and I have to be up early, I get in my own head and I think, oh, I have to be up early. I have to fall asleep. So I have to be up. And the more you think about having to fall asleep, the more you don't fall asleep because your mind is racing about how you have to fall asleep. And so it's possible that was happening to her. But I still think after 2 days, I would fall asleep, you know?
Yeah. And move away from the snores, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that was the other thing.
You can move, right? But I said I was going to say this. So I don't have a buff here. But with the way I slept, I wear glasses all the time. And I even wore them. I am a little allergic to my contacts. So I only wore my contacts in the show if we were going to water or something very specific, right? So I would always wear my buff, but I will always sleep with my glasses because in the middle of the night, and it's dark, so it's hard to see, but in the middle of the night, if I heard something, you better believe I wanted to see what was happening. So I would put my buff up until here, but I still wore my glasses and I still wanted to see what was happening in the middle of the night. That tells you I was in the game 24/7 because as soon as I see something, I was like, okay, that's not someone like trying to talk, sneaking out to talk or whatever. And I always try to be the first one to wake up. That is so key. If you wake up first, you get opportunities to talk to people without having to sneak, away.
Well, she never slept, so
that's fair.
But in general, I do think that waking up first was such an advantage because I could talk to the randomest people before everyone else, woke up. Like while people were sleeping, that was so key for my game. Waking up early. Anyway.
Yeah. All right, we can move on to Appendix A, which is about the tribe keeping their end goals in mind when voting. And we talk about voting out the weak, then the strong, then the weak, then the strong. At this point in the game, players should generally be voting out the weak, though that could be related to challenges, overall tribal unity, general alliance strength. For her part, Hannah definitely voted out the weak.
She did. She right on. Good job on this rule.
Now, as for everyone else who we normally talk about, Hannah didn't give them any choice. They wanted to vote out most likely Emily because of the way she was causing divisiveness, or possibly Brandon because of challenges, but we'll never fully know how it was going to go. We've already talked about the whole Kendra twist. So yeah, we'll just, there's just not a whole lot more to say about
not a whole lot.
That's it.
So, which is good because that brings us to the end here. So what, with the wrap up in mind, Heidi, what are your final thoughts?
Okay. I am super excited for 45. The premiere gave us some insights that this is going to be possibly a really good season. I love the 90 minutes episodes. It brings a good pace. To your point, I hope we get to see more about the players so we fall in love with them and we learn to hate them even more than maybe we already hate them in a good way, in a gaming kind of way, right? And not personal level.
Right.
So I am super hopeful that this is going to be a fantastic season. I do think it's going to pick up. Maybe I'll get into the predictions here, but I do think they're gonna have to do something with Yellow. Production is probably like already scratching their heads thinking like, how are we gonna get Yellow to somehow survive? Do we swap something or do we send someone there? I don't know exactly what they're gonna do, but I do think Yellow is a hot mess and I love it for viewing purposes. So I am in it to win it, right? I love watching it. I think it's gonna get even better between Brandon and Emily. I think we talk about Emily so much. I love her from a fandom perspective, right? You do love having someone so like breaking the rules so badly in a way that she's breaking her game. I don't think she could last that long if she keeps it up. But I'm excited and I have a lot of biases, but I'm cheering for a lot of them because there's a lot of good potential within players there.
Yes. All right, Jessica, what do you think?
So I think if Hannah has provided anything to us, it has been kind of the how not to play Survivor when you were going out to play Survivor, which is unfortunate that that will be the legacy she leaves behind. Looking at her pregame, I thought that we would have more from her. She did seem to have some plans. She was very excited about Brandon, and then the fact that they were on the same tribe together, I thought this is a great opportunity for them to really work together, to become a duo. She sounded like she would do well. And I truly believe she could have played that middle ground very, very well, considering the dynamics of her tribe. But unfortunately, Hannah did not prepare the correct way that you need to prepare when you're going out to play a game like Survivor. This is Survivor. You will need to survive. Surviving is a component. I realize there's a lot of game show aspects that have been added throughout the years, and that's something that we talk about a lot, but that's only one part of this game. No, they don't give you extra like granola bars when you're talking to production over on the side. You know, they don't sneak you little comfort things like a pillow or a blanket. There are no porta potties over, you know, where they're not filming. You are on an island in the clothes that you're wearing, and that's how you are surviving. And there are bugs in your water, and it's dirty, and there are bugs everywhere, and you get filthy and you smell, and it's all of that stuff. And yes, you're peeing in the woods. I mean, you're doing everything in the elements. You have to prepare yourself for all of that, because if you are not willing to do that, then you just cannot play this game. And unfortunately, Hannah did not go into this with the right mindset. This is not something that you can say, well, when I get there, I'll figure it out. No, because because by the time you get there, you haven't figured it out, and you're not going to be able to figure it out. So unfortunately for Hannah, she definitely did not take full advantage of what is an incredible opportunity. And I can truly understand why people sitting on their couches at home, especially that alternate, are probably very, very frustrated and upset because they wanted to play this game. And she was out there with 5 other people that wanted to play this game. I appreciate that she respected that about them, but I also feel for all of those people that didn't get a chance to go because she did. So unfortunately for Hannah, she is now going to have left us that legacy. And I do hope that anyone else who decides that they want to try to do this takes heed and really thinks about it and says, hey, you know what? Maybe I need to take some extra steps to prepare myself in every way, shape, or form. It's not just about the rules, even though the rules are awesome and need to be followed. There is another component of it, and that is yourself physically being able to handle everything that is thrown at you, whether it be no food, sleeping, lack of, protection from the elements, all of those things. You have to prepare yourself. So sorry, Hannah, that you didn't. Well, I'm sorry that you didn't do that for yourself, because it would have been great to see you do that, because I think that she could have done well in the game.
Yeah. Well put.
Yeah, Hannah admitted she came onto Survivor on a whim, and her lack of preparation showed. She knew she had trouble going without food, even by just doing some intermittent fasting, but she didn't do anything about it. She knew she should quit nicotine and caffeine ahead of time rather than going cold turkey, but she didn't do anything about it. I mentioned earlier that sometimes there are things I don't want to do, and I don't do them. And that's fine for me. But I'm not in a game for $1 million. It seems like Hannah is indeed fine with her decision, and I'm glad for her. Truly, I wouldn't want this to be something she looks back on and says, I wish I'd tried harder, because she's not going to get another chance. But we've also dealt with many players who've made poor decisions in the game and said they wouldn't change anything, or they played with a different purpose in mind, or whatever. So her being okay with that doesn't mean we have to be okay with how she played, just like we wouldn't be for those people. Casting bears a lot of the blame for not catching all these red flags ahead of time. But it was Hannah's decision to apply and go to Fiji to play without really taking it seriously. It was Hannah's decision to quit when things got difficult, even though she knew she might be able to push through if she really wanted to. But she didn't. Hannah came in unprepared for what she would face and got hit hard by all the realities of Survivor. And that is why Hannah lost.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes. So.
Woo, we got through it.
Yes. But there's more. I I know, 2 hours in, but
2 hours and there's more.
because we have predictions. Now, before we get to our predictions, I do want to remind everyone that you can get the rules we just discussed on a poster or a t-shirt or a checklist by going to robhasawebsite.com/YXLostFeed. There we go. But people can also find us at other places.
Oh, yes, we can. There's that thing called social media that Hannah doesn't have any of, but we do. I am at, oh my gosh, now I have Hannah's name in my head. I'm at Jessica Lewis 89 on Twitter, and you can certainly follow me there. I'm also on Instagram at Jessica Lewis 6789. David Bloomberg has an insane amount of social media areas that you can go to, so much so he has an entire page dedicated to everything David Bloomberg. So you should definitely go to his link tree, and then from there you can go to all of his incredible content: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, it's there. And he just put it up for those that are watching.
Yes, the link tree is at linktree/David Bloomberg with a dot before the EE. For simplicity's sake, all of the text-based social media is at David Bloomberg. All of the video-based is at David Bloomberg TV. And then when I said all of the text-based, I forgot, not Threads, because it's connected to Instagram. So it's at David Bloomberg TV there too. Heidi, where can people find you?
I should have put it in my name here, but all my handles are the same. I do have a link tree as well, so you can see all my links there. But everything is at Heidi Lagares, one word. So you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, everywhere else with the same handle, at Heidi Lagares.
I did not do justice to your name when I introduced you earlier. I can't quite
she
get
says
that.
Well, it is your name, but it's so beautiful when you say it. It's very nice.
Yes.
Thank you. So my name is Heidi Lagares-Greenblatt, and I actually have the longest name in Survivor history. Someone gave me that stat, and I didn't know that was true, but it is true.
That's fascinating. And another hyphenated name. I love this. Thank you. We have that in common.
Yes. Now, yes. I also wanted to mention I forgot to mention this regarding my TikToks and videos. I have been posting 3, sometimes 4 videos per day or more at all of these. Mostly their thoughts on what we saw on Survivor or Big Brother or the Big Brother live feeds, or even a few from other shows. Speaking of Big Brother, this week was supposed to be the official start for me of double duty podcasting, Why Blank Lost. But Big Brother essentially skipped a week, so did we. But starting next week, I'll be doing both this podcast with Jessica and the Big Brother version with Ovi each weekend. Now, now we can get into our predictions. I watched the preview twice, and I really don't remember much about it other than Emily. And, that's not really surprising because, Survivor and CBS realize they have someone who is going to draw attention for however long they're still there. And the question is how long that will be. If we strictly look at the preview through the lens of Hubicki's Law, then Emily will be safe. Now, for new listeners or anyone who might not remember, I created Hubicki's Law during David versus Goliath season when previews kept suggesting that Christian was in danger, but we knew he wasn't. And so the law basically says if a person is overly focused on in the preview, they're probably safe. However, there are exceptions. Sometimes we'll get a curveball. And so the question here is, are we getting that curveball right out of the gate? Because one, I find it difficult to believe Lulu will not lose the next immunity challenge.
It's hard.
Sorry.
As Heidi said, they're a hot mess.
Yes.
Hot mess.
So then it becomes a question of voting out Emily or Brandon. If they determine that Brandon slowed them down too much, or if Brandon once again talks about playing a shot in the dark, that may be all it takes for Caleb and Sabaya and Sean to vote him out. But we also have to remember that whatever might happen in the challenges, Emily literally called out Caleb and especially Sabaya and wants them gone. She stood there or sat there in tribal council to the point where Sabaya was like, well, I'd like to respond since I just got run over by a bus here, you know?
Yeah.
With that in mind, I have to think those two will know, those two being Caleb and Sabaya, will know that keeping themselves safe is the best move, and Emily will get the boot. And I'll chalk up this exception to Hubicki's Law, to CBS wanting, like I said, to get what they could out of Emily, as I mentioned earlier. So I think Emily's going.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I think it's interesting that one of her confessionals was inclusive of either I want to be voted out first or like, you know, I mean, it was very interesting that she was like, basically it was like, you better vote me out first or I'm going to win. So I'm like, well, that's interesting. So technically she wasn't voted out first because, well, you know, Hannah wanted to go home, but I don't see how they would keep her around, even though if Brandon is not doing well in the challenges, because at least Brandon has shown some loyalty to the other people in the tribe because he came and shared with them that she was throwing their names around. So I feel like that's where things are headed in that same direction.
Well, so I'm going to go a different direction, but similar but different. I do think that they will lose the next one, but I think Brandon is the one going out, and here's why. If you are the other 3 or 4, including Emily there, and you see that Brandon is really holding you back, that's not gonna do it for him. So I do think you try to keep it strong because you're already dwindling in numbers. And even though Emily may be super annoying, you know, if Brandon goes first, at least it gives you an opportunity to survive with Emily, right? And if Brandon is out, you keep Emily. You potentially win, but if you lose, then Emily's next. So that's how I would see it. But I do think Brandon, if he doesn't perform at the challenges, he's gonna be the next one going, and I'm gonna be so sad for him because he'll probably be crying. But I do think it's gonna be him, unfortunately, and I do think they're gonna have to change something, otherwise Yellow is not going to survive. But those that will survive, though, from the Yellow tribe, will do really well after the merge because they're going to play that middle, right? They're in this era. I think the strong tribes typically go against each other. Tell me about it. I know. Yeah. So for those that may survive the Yellow tribe, Lulu tribe, they will do really well in the merge, but they're going to have to get rid of Brandon next.
Yeah, I could definitely see Caleb and Sabaya as a duo moving through. Sean, it's not really clear that
not yet
where he fits in, but those two as a duo, I could see them moving through the game together, which is, you know, why Emily wants them out, which again goes back to it's a little soon for that, Emily.
Right.
All right. Well, as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. You can get access to all the special podcasts that are put out just for patrons, which, I mean, there's a ton of them for Big Brother. There's a ton of them for Survivor. You know, like Rob, I think it was on Thursday, he did, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 different podcasts or something like that. So here I am talking about I have 2 to do a week, and Rob's in there, you know. And then even when Rob isn't talking directly to everyone, there are the Facebook groups, Discord, great community of people. So, you know, everyone, you can support shows like ours and everything on the network and get those bonuses by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron, or click the link at our robhasawebsite.com/YXLostFeed page. And of course, you know, once you get to the Facebook groups, you can say hello.
Yes, you should definitely say hello. And can I do thank yous?
Well, I just want to say also, make sure everyone is subscribed to all of the reality TV RHAP Up podcasts by going to robhasawebsite.com/RHAP feed, selecting your podcast service of choice. So we talked about all the podcasts Rob does, but there's also the ones that the rest of us do too. So you'll find us, the B&B, the Stock Watch, Survivor International, other podcasts on a number of different shows, the Big Brother shows, you name it, it's out there. So again, robhasawebsite.com/RHAP feed.
So we'd like to thank Scott St. Pierre for all of the editing that he does, not only for our show here, but all of the shows that you've heard David Bloomberg speak to. And also thank you to the whole RHAP and Reality TV RHAP Ups behind the scenes team for all of the work that they do editing and posting. and everything else. So we really appreciate everything that they do. Thank you to Will from America for our little theme song. I still don't think it's before our YouTube, but it is on just the sound version. So thank you for that. But yes, we appreciate all the work. They do an incredible amount to put out so much content, and it really is appreciated by not just the people who are sitting here, but all of the listeners, I'm sure, appreciate it. So thank you so much to all of them for the incredible work that you do. So thanks.
Yes, and thank you, Heidi. This was great.
Yes.
This was so much fun. You gave us commercials for us in the podcast.
I know. We've got a TikTok here that we can just watch our show, because here's Heidi talking about it. I love it.
So thank you. Great insight, and it just a lot of fun. Jessica, thank you for all of your normal great insight and fun, which we can get every week. So
thank you for having me. I love you both. Hopefully we get to do this in the future.
Yes.
Thank you. It was so fun. Thank you again.
Yeah, this is so nice, and I actually got to chat with you for the first time. So I love this, having this opportunity to chat. And thank you for, again, the insights as well. It's always good to hear perspectives from people who have experienced the game in a different way, and then we can compare and contrast. And I think it's just lovely to be able to do that. So thank you, Heidi.
Yes. And see where it overlaps. And it's like, this is why we both do this. We did these things.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And that's what I love about this podcast, right? The differences amongst the people that you do have in between the two of you. So right on. So fun. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, with that, we will see you in a week, and I will see everyone, well, at least everyone who watches both shows, twice next week, right around this time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.